great to be here today at the Bidgely Engage Virtual Conference. A little bit of background on myself. So I've been with JDPower about 12 years. Prior to joining JDPower, I was very lucky to work at Disney, OnStar, Saturn. I had some great kind of learnings and experience with some of the best customer satisfaction, guest satisfaction companies that there were or are out there. So joined JDPower. Initially was kind of the call center expert. And after about a year, one of our VPs for utilities approached me and said, "Hey, how would you like to work with utilities?" And I was kind of like, well, Disney, utilities, I guess they're kind of way different. So it's been a great experience over the last 12 years. Looking forward to kind of walk you through a little bit of what JDPower is seeing from a customer satisfaction, from an engagement perspective. We'll talk a little bit about how important the digital side is, but also kind of that human touch piece as well. So when JDPower looks at kind of across different industries, the keys to improving customer satisfaction, cover just a few kind of key pieces. One of the challenges I had initially when I started doing this was utilities that had low satisfaction in the beginning would fight me. So they'd say, who were these customers and how do we even know they're our customers? And they really, because their scores were bad, it was kind of like telling them their son or daughter got a D in math, and then they're going to fight you as the teacher during the conference. But then when you ask them, well, does he study? Does he know where the library is? And as you kind of go through those, and I would see it with utilities, that they would realize, yeah, we're not really good at this, we're not really good at that. And the other key thing from a JDPower perspective, and we'll talk a little bit more of this in a second, is it isn't what I think. It isn't what 6 JDPower think in some random room in our headquarters. We survey thousands and thousands of your customers, and we just add up the score. So it isn't what John Hazen thinks. It's what your customers have told us, and we're just there to kind of relay that along with to kind of give you a little extra kick in the rear to kind of improve satisfaction. The other piece is dig deep into details. We'll talk about our surveys are not 10 questions. They are 100+ questions, very deep diagnostic questions, attribute questions, there's factor scores, but we also capture everything but name and address. We can tell you county, zip code, age, satisfaction by those categories. So to understand how you dig into the results, maybe your overall satisfaction is pretty good, but your challenge is with your older customers or maybe with your younger customers. So we really recommend to kind of dig into the details to kind of understand the differences between your customers. The other thing is don't be shy. Some utilities are afraid that, we won't hit our goals. So they don't even publicize them internally. A few brave ones actually publicize their satisfaction goals publicly. We're going to be X by a certain time frame. We actually have some utilities, like in the state of New York, where part of their agreement with the state is they have to hit certain kind of parameters around their JDPower satisfaction score. So to me, the utilities that do the best on improving satisfaction, or any company, is customers and employees kind of know, hey, we want to be first quartile JDPower. We want to achieve this. And they also tie some of their money and incentives internally to those goals as well. The other thing is you got to hold folks accountable. One of my favorite utility people is Monica Whiting, who just left Tampa Electric to become the chief customer officer at Arizona Public Service. And when we asked her one time, her key to success is, she said, I'm mean with a smile. So she would go down the hall with a big old smile, and she would tell her coworkers or peers that, hey, your group is driving calls to my call center, or things they are doing are impacting customer satisfaction. So it really, you have to hold folks accountable. Is if a certain team or part of the organization or even an individual isn't doing their job from a customer satisfaction, you have to do something about it. You can't just ignore it, especially in 2020. Everybody has a video camera, so you can't have what I would say a dumb John employee that's out there doing something stupid, because that's going to end up on a video and the CEO is going to be explaining why he was doing what he was doing. So very important that the team is also held accountable. The other part is cheat from others. Part of what JDPower provides from a overall for utilities is we give you your scores and all the information that your customers told us, but we also and this is in every industry, is you get access to everyone else's data. So you get the other 140 brands scores and results and customer comments. So so to me, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can kind of cheat. Look at the top communications brands, the Salt Rivers, the Florida Power and Light, and look at kind of what they've done from a communications or even their website, and borrow that and kind of repurpose or position it to kind of help yourself. And we're really good at that. We do best practice webcasts all the time to say, hey, here's overall scores, but also here are the top performers and why are they the top performers. And the other piece is you have to have a culture focused on customer. When I kind of talk to utilities and I say, hey, tell me a story of where you did a really good job, where you kind of wowed a customer. And typically they look at each other like, well, 2 years ago we did something. But what was great when I was at Disney and OnStar and Saturn, it was kind of where we tried to outdo ourselves. How do we improve? This team did something for customers. What did another team do? And it wasn't months ago, it was last week. So you have to have the culture where folks are focused on improving, but also if the process says I'm supposed to leave after step A or step 6, then it's okay if they go outside the norms and maybe do something extra for that customer if I'm a field person. So again, how do you create a culture that's focused on customers where it isn't some corporate executive saying we're going to do X from satisfaction? It really is the team as a whole focused on improving. And then the other key is communication, whether it's with employees or with customers, because utility customers, if they don't hear from you, you're the evil utility. You're the big bad utility, where if they hear you, they know you, they interact with your team, scores go up, because even if it's bad news, they want to hear it from their utility. So real quick JDPower overview. As I mentioned, our studies are 100+ questions long. We used to do it by phone. Everything's done online since probably about 2008. So an email invitation goes out to a customer. They can start it today, they can start it tomorrow, they can finish it next Sunday. So it isn't like the old days where the phone would ring and the person online say, hey, can you do a survey? And it's right at dinner time. So they can kind of start it and stop it, what's inconvenient for them. But as I mentioned, 100+ questions. Typically for utility studies, there's 6 core pieces of it, factors. It's power, quality, and reliability, it's communications, it's customer service, it's billing and payment, it's price. So it's the whole experience for the customer. It's not just customer service, it's really the whole experience from a customer. And then there's some very detailed math that kind of goes into it. So we just don't ask questions, and they're all equal in what drives satisfaction. Our stats folks can determine which ones are more important to customers. Keeping the lights on is very important from an electric perspective. And again, there's some things are more important than others. And I think that is where kind of the secret sauce to JDPower is the weighting of the importance and really driving kind of improvements based upon maybe where your gaps are, versus some that do it much better. And then real quick, like I said, I've been with the utility team for about 11 years. What's crazy is we do just the utility practice alone, 225,000 surveys a year. Our res electric study is 100,000+ every single year. You look at some of the polls today for the election coming up in November, 1,100, 900, and that's to do the whole country, where it's amazing that we have 100,000 just in one of our studies. So, and again, from a typical brand, we have anywhere from 400 to maybe 1,600 surveys just for that utility alone. So great sample sizes. As I mentioned, we have industry experts. How I became a utility expert, God only knows, but and we can bore our spouses when we start talking about all our utility stuff. But we have folks who've been doing this a long time, who understand what drives satisfaction in the utility industry, very experienced when it comes to customer satisfaction for utilities. We do electric, we do gas, we do water studies. We also have a digital expert. So we have a team led by Amit, who not only does utility websites and apps, but he also does insurance, he does autos. So he really is an expert on apps and kind of the digital experience. We have a contact center improvement team that we've had for probably 15, 16 years as well. And we just launched a climate change sustainability study that Andrew Heath is leading, that I think the webcast and the press release just went out about a week or so ago. So that's JD Power, real kind of in a nutshell. Let's talk about COVID and kind of what's happened, in the really March, April, May time period. We'll look at some specific information that we have. So our residential electric study is a quarterly study. The first quarter obviously was January, February. The second quarter was April, May fielding, and we were able to add in some questions related to the virus and what's happening. So we asked utility customers, about 28,000 across the country, based on what your utility has done so far, do you have a more positive kind of a feeling towards them? Is it neutral, about the same, or is it negative? And what's great to see is those that said yes, what our utility has done, from whether it's stopping disconnects or waiving late fees or everything they've done to kind of communicate, here's what we're doing based on the virus and the crisis and everything that's going on. Scores are up 121 points for overall satisfaction for those brands and those customers that say most positive. Orlando Utilities, FPL, Georgia Power, Clay, Duke, Tallahassee. You can kind of see it's a cross section of both large utilities, mid-size, but also the co-ops that are doing a good job. The challenge coming forward is utilities, like other industries, were good kind of doing the positive thing to respond to the virus, right? But what's going to happen when FPL announced they're going to start doing disconnects? They're going to, they didn't waive the fees, the past bills. They just deferred the payment. So those customers are going to be in a little bit of a shock when they realize, hey, guess what? You still have to pay that $900 that you haven't paid already from your electric bill. So when you look from a customer verbatims, though, what was really awesome to see, along with capturing all this data, we also capture just customers' comments. They've been really great about helping their customers because I lost my job. So here's a customer of a utility that lost his job and really is thanking his utility for what they've been doing for them. Earn my respect. Here's a first responder. I'm a household or essential workers. But it was nice to hear the power company was the first to kind of jump in and assist customers, which is great. And the other one, done a great job of helping families. And again, OUC has done, kind of the best in some ways because, 30% of their customers have said, I have a better feeling toward OUC, and we saw it in their scores, especially for the second quarter, really took a big jump in satisfaction. But as I mentioned, the challenge is kind of going forward. You look at, as customers fall behind and cutoffs loom, agencies are going to be flooded. What's it going to do to overall satisfaction? The disconnects are going to happen, right? You can't go forever without paying your electric or gas bill. You had the issue in Baltimore. You had the challenges with sticker shock. Folks that, everybody's home. My daughter's in the room next to me. She's a junior in high school. She's taking classes online. Internet's kind of having some challenges. When you from keeping up and running, but also your electric bill. Everybody's home. It's not like everybody went to an office or went to school. So that'll be a challenge going forward. Con Edison had some issue with the tropical storm. Again, delinquency rates for Duke FPL. You've got, what's going to happen? We've heard from some utilities that they're not going to go back into the office until 2021 in the summertime. So what does that do from even just all of us interacting with coworkers and from a productivity? We've done some things on work at home, customer care. Utilities were slow to migrate call center agents to at home, and that changed in March. And what we've heard, and we're doing some internal stuff to really assess that better, but they had to do it, and it's actually turned out pretty good. I've been making some test calls, 800 numbers into utilities, and probably half of them are at home. Some have a few folks in the office, some folks at home. So interesting to see how utilities are really slow to be at home from a customer care with agents. And bam, they had to figure it out within a couple of weeks because that was what they had to do to kind of ramp up their call center again. And, Eversource, I've worked closely with them. They were improving, and all of a sudden, the tropical storm hit and they've had challenges. And so, one of the things that I kind of am a fan of is kind of how the Navy SEALs look at the world. And, one of their key slogans is embrace the suck. We know that something's not going to be a great experience. So you have a choice. You can either whine about it or you can kind of just suck it up and deal with it. And I think that's what we all have to do. for the rest of 2020, especially from a customer experience. How are you going to improve the experience knowing that, hey, we all have these different challenges going on? I love this quote. This was from a utility customer from, I think, late last year. They always treat us as their most important customer. I think from a customer satisfaction perspective, folks just want to feel important, especially business customers, right? If I'm one of your, utilities do a great job of taking care of their big utility customers, business customers, but what about the small, the subways, the mom and pops? And I think the better, again, you treat the folks and just how do you make me feel important? So, as I call into these 800 numbers, you hear some agents and they answer and they're awesome. There was a girl I talked to last week. I loved her enthusiasm. She asked me for extra help. I can do this, I can do that. But then I've called others and, they answered the phone kind of like, hi, so how can I help you? And right away you think, okay, this is going to stink. This is just going to be a sucky experience because the agent just started the call off bad. But how do you focus and kind of really make folks feel that they're important to you? So we'll dive a little bit into the data. So I know that the folks at Bidgely love this because this is an example of some of their communications that they have put in place for some of their utility clients. But what's great is energy efficiency awareness drives higher satisfaction. Customers don't even have to take advantage of the energy efficiency program. It's just that they're aware of that there's something available. Look at overall satisfaction. It's 100 points higher if they're aware of what you're doing. So again, communications is critical from improving. There's some utilities that aren't very good at keeping the lights on, but they're great from a communications and corporate citizenship, and they're winning JDPower trophies because their customers recognize how critical and how important they are at kind of telling their story. So what's interesting, I live in Florida. I'm about 20 minutes outside of downtown Orlando. I'm about 25 minutes from Disney World, about 20 from Universal Studios, which is great. And Florida has a really good tracker for the virus. I mean, very good graphics, and you can really drill into the information. But the problem is there's my zip code, 34787. There's 1,300 cases, but it's cumulative. So it doesn't really help us because it doesn't tell me how many cases were on Sunday versus on Monday versus today. So it's great from an overall, and graphically it looks really cool, but it kind of stinks from a data because I don't know. So I have to physically write down to understand, okay, there were 33 more versus the day before. So this is, to me, an example of a really cool graphic, but kind of lousy from a data to be able to understand kind of what's going on. This I think is great. So Eric on our team, as I mentioned, we have all this data, so we can dig into zip code and county information and really understand where pockets of satisfactions may be higher, lower by county, but also by age and income, et cetera. So here's a great example of, PG&E, of where satisfaction is higher, lower by county, but also where communications satisfaction is higher or lower. So maybe there's areas that are in red are ones, obviously they need to focus more attention from a communications perspective. So again, it's digging into the data better and understanding kind of a deeper insights around customers. So, and here's another great example. This is a utility I've been working with, and it compares large brands' overall satisfaction by age compared to theirs. So when you look, they're really good. Their older customers love them, but then you look at their Gen Z customers, not so much compared to the industry for other large brands. And we've seen this for others. There's a couple others in the Northeast that have really high satisfaction with their older customers, not so great with their younger. There's even one in New York that flips. Their older customers kind of hate them, and their younger customers are more engaged and give them a higher overall satisfaction. Knowing this, you then can target, in this case, okay, how do I improve satisfaction for those Gen Z? What is the issue? Where the one in New York, it's, okay, how do I improve satisfaction for those older customers that are mad at me? This I thought was great. So engaging employees, but I was watching, one of the business channels, and Jamie Dimon was on talking about what JP Morgan Chase does from an overall satisfaction. And I think this is great because when I used to fix call centers, the best way to do it is you'd sit with an agent or you'd sit with a team of supervisors and just say, hey, if you were king or queen for the day, what would you fix? What needs to get improved? He does this. He goes on a beer and immunity tour. So basically, he meets with customers, he meets with employees, they can have a drink and just open up. Hey, Tell me whatever you think needs to be fixed, what's good, what's bad. From a utility perspective, I don't think we want to go with beer, but I think maybe we can go with maybe Diet Coke or lemonade or something from a safety perspective. But again, how do you engage not just customers, but also employees, because they're the ones who know really what's broken and what needs to be fixed. This I love. So Zappos, they did something at the beginning of the COVID crisis that I thought was awesome, is they just said, hey, you know what? We're here for customer service normally, but we'll help you any way we can. So if you dial our 800 number and you're having a challenge completely unrelated to Zappos and shoes, our team will jump in. Our team will try to help you. I thought, what a cool way. I bet they didn't have many that actually took them up on it, but what a great marketing ploy, even from utility. I know it's tough from handle time and number of agents, but what a cool thing if a utility had said, hey, you know what, we're in Washington, D.C., we're here. If you want to dial our number, we'll see if we can't help you beyond from an electric or gas perspective. But very cool by Zappos, I think, in this case. So when you look at customers, and the digital is very important. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second, especially with, payment centers closed, more folks going online, but customers really want the human touch piece. It's very important. Even, my Gen Zs want that human interaction. So here's a great example. I was talking to someone that's in the Washington, D.C. area a few minutes ago. So a 8-year-old girl sends a letter. She looks up the address to what she thought was Petco, but accidentally gets the address to Pepco, sends a letter to her utility in DC, and instead of throwing the letter away or sending a form letter, they actually took the initiative to call the mom and say, is it okay if we buy a hamster for your 8-year-old daughter? They did that, and the folks at Pepco will tell you they got more coverage, media coverage for that silly hamster than they did for anything else they did that year. To me, that's awesome. But when I go back to Pepco, maybe later this year or next year, I'm gonna say, okay, that was great a year or so ago. What have you done since? What else have you done that's kind of cool from a customer experience? The other one, I don't know if many of you folks have saw this, where, here in Orlando, there was a lady, older woman who I think maybe had her 90th birthday. And one of the utility workers sang her happy birthday, and it went viral. I saw it on NBC Nightly News. He had a great voice, which really helped. And it really kind of resonated with not only the customer, but really across the country. So great kind of media coverage. I think it was a Tico People's Gas employee that was the singer. And the other one that I talk up quite a bit when I'm with my clients and different utilities is thank you notes. When I was at Saturn, when I was at Disney, I encouraged my team to send thank you notes, not just to each other, but also to customers. So here's a great example, and one that I love, because this was a thank you note for the original note. So one of the call center agents at Tampa Electric sent a handwritten note to a customer, condolences about maybe someone had passed away, and that customer then sent a note back to Tampa Electric thanking them for really shocking them and surprising them with sending the thank you note. So my challenge really to everybody on the phone is, how many handwritten thank you notes did you send out in the last month, last couple months, last year? Again, it's that personal human piece that really can drive higher satisfaction. And then just to wrap up, when you look at, as we talked about, digital expectations, folks aren't going in, as I've been calling some of these 800 numbers for utilities, are your walk-in centers open? No, they're not open, maybe by appointment. So folks have really migrated away from maybe going in to pay, but their digital expectations are huge. And it's really not based on other utilities. It's based on all the other industries they interact with. You're being kind of measured against Amazon and some of these other non-utility industries, and kind of the expectation, the bar is set pretty high. Channel preference, I was surprised when I made some phone calls recently. There were maybe 4 or 5 brands that had chat available, but you have to kind of go where your customers want to kind of interact with you. Is it easy from a frictionless? Is it, our web guy will take a look at, your website versus, some others. And is it clunky? Is it easy to work? Is it kind of, 4 steps, not 42 steps? And even your folks, if I call your 800 number, do they have to get approval? Do they have to, put me on hold for 10 minutes to go find a supervisor? How do you make it more engaging because the COVID has really changed kind of what, the future is kind of unknown at this point, because of kind of COVID and what we're all living. So it's JD Power goes across all these different industries, whether it's insurance or banking or automotive or utilities. What are kind of 10 things we see kind of across all different industries? And I think the first one isn't even part of the 10. It's thank you, right? I'd go to Chick-fil-A and, my pleasure and thank you. I can be a tough customer at times, but I would never yell at a Chick-fil-A employee because they're just awesome. They're very friendly and they're very well trained, and they will say thank you and my pleasure. And I think that's one of the things we see. It's those simple things, whether it's a field folks or whether it's a call center agent. Do you actually go and thank customers, and work backwards? What is the end customer? If a customer sets an appointment with you, is it a 4-hour window? Is it an 8-hour window? Do you miss those appointments and not tell those customers? We've had that where we did some journey mapping, and I said, okay, well, this utility, field person got pulled away to go on some emergency. I said, how did the customer know? And they didn't in this case. So kind of work backwards from the customer. Customers will give you a grace period. You get a hurricane or tornado or big winter storm. They understand that outages are going to happen. But on a day like today here in Florida, blue sky, if my power goes out, I want to know why and kind of what's going on. They judge you on the basics. Are you good at sending the bill on time? Is it easy to read? Do you process my payment fast? Or do you just do kind of what you're in business to do well? Convenience. Can you make it easy for me? And a consistent customer message. So if I go to your website, does it kind of line up with your social media? Does it line up with your IVR messaging when I call your call center and maybe I wait on hold for a little bit? And the other one is they're going to measure, as we talked about, against others. Every customer is mobile. If you don't talk to them, they'll wander, not necessarily from a utility perspective, but for utilities, you'll just have low satisfaction. If they don't hear from you, again, you're the big old evil utility, and they're going to give you lower scores, even if it's bad news. So again, they want communications. You're my utility. I want to hear from you. They want you to know them, right? If I go through your IVR and I punch in my, account number, why is it when I get to an agent, they have to ask me the account number again, or they transfer me and I have to kind of explain it again? And I think the other key thing, and it's with anyone, whether it's your boss or your utility, if you make a promise, keep the promise. We always talk about if there's an outage and you tell me the power is going to come back on at say 4 o'clock, it's great if it comes on at 3 or 3:30, but if it comes on at 4:05, 4:15, satisfaction takes a pretty good hit. And then just to wrap up, again, I love the quotes from actual customers, but here's a great example. I don't have to worry about it. Most people don't really want to worry about their utility, whether it's electric, gas, or water. Communications are easy to understand. I have payment options. Again, meet the customer where they kind of want to interact with you. Up front, if the bill is late, emails are fun to read. I've looked at some utility communications, and it looks like the engineering and the finance department got together to kind of create some sort of form letter to customers. Is it easy? Is it bright? Is it got big font? Is it engaging from a customer perspective? Are you easy? Easy to do business with, again. And in this case, no complaints or worries with the company. So I think, to kind of wrap up, and then we'll open up for questions, is A, make sure you have your mask, but I think the other key is for all of us is we really have to embrace the suck. It's going to be kind of a crappy year, whether we're in an office, not in an office, and everything that's going on. But I think if you do that with the focus on how do we take better care of our customers, I really think it'll pay off, not just this year, but into the future years.